What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so we are picking up with Flash War Part 2. Okay, Flash War Part 2 is amazing. Dude, okay, dude, Flash is amazing. I really wish Joshua Williamson had been in Denver Comic Con because I got to see everybody else. I got to see Sam Humphries and hang out with him. Dude, man, I love Sam Humphries writing. He's like one of my top 5 favorite writers. Like, I'll read anything the guy writes. But anyway, okay. So Flash War is basically kind of like wrapping up the whole thing with Wally West, right? Like we talked about that in the first video, that in DC Universe Rebirth #1, Barry Allen had essentially pulled Wally West out of the Speed Force, and then Wally's just kind of been free floating ever since. Like he's been in a couple Flash stories, he's been part of the main Titans roster, but that's really it. Like the whole idea of like what's going on with him behind the scenes and how it ties into all the different aspects of the Flash mythos that have basically been missing throughout all this time, none of those questions were really answered. And Flash War gives us this. Specifically, this story opens up with Jai and Ira. I always thought it was Iris West, and I feel like it was Iris West at one point, and then it was changed. And I want to say somebody mentioned that at Denver Comic Con, that it was Iris West before Jeff Johns wrote Infinite Crisis, and then it was Ira afterwards. Although I'm not going to swear to that. The cool thing about this is, remember, when it came to Jai, or when it came to the kids of Wally West, a lot of the lessons he imparted on them were part and parcel to what happened with Impulse, with Bart Allen. And the reason why was because after Barry Allen died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, or at least was believed to have been dead, Wally West became the new Flash. And the idea of DC at the time was, well, let's just give him a new Kid Flash. Like, it makes the most sense. So they grabbed Bart Allen from the future. They said that his Speed Force powers were running out of control. He didn't really know how to contain them. And so they brought him to the 20th century. They handed him over to Wally to teach him how to control his powers. Wally didn't know how. He was like, I mean, I guess I can, but I'm not really a teacher. I can impart what pearls of wisdom I gained from Barry, but I'm not really a teacher in this regard. I'm not that familiar with the Speed Force. And now those things changed with stories like Terminal Velocity, but what ended up happening was Bart Allen was handed over to Max Mercury, who trained him. But the idea of Wally helping to kind of get Impulse's powers in check, which is to say, putting him in a position to where his Speed Force abilities are stabilized and they're not accelerating his aging, is basically what was imparted to the kids of Wally. It was sitting down and saying they had the exact same problem. That's kind of where this comes from. The issue with this is that Wally didn't remember him. When Wally came back, he did not remember his kids. And that's kind of the crazy thing, is that it was a little piecemeal. Now, in reality, I'd say this is Joshua Williamson kind of going through and doing it in stages, right? Like if Wally had come back in DC Universe Rebirth #1, and then it turned into where are Wally West's kids? And then it turned into like the whole thing with Linda Park. Then like basically the whole concept of Wally would have been fleshed out in 6 months. And there would have been no real storytelling to give after that. Instead, what DC's doing here is they're staging it out. They're saying, here's Wally when he comes back, and then here's a couple things here and there. And then here's Wally with some part of his past, and then here's a couple things here and there. And then here's Flash War. We basically get the whole kit and caboodle. And so it's cool for what it is, because what we end up knowing here, or at least what we're kind of told here, is that a lot of this centers around Hunter Zolomon. Now remember, in the last video we talked about this, that Hunter Zolomon was Jeff Johns' Reverse Flash. The thing here is that what you end up having is you end up having Wally who kind of freaks out and attacks Hunter Zolomon. And when he does, he starts to get these kind of flashback of memories, in the sense that he almost kind of absorbs memories directly from Hunter Zolomon himself. Now, this is part and parcel to the powers of Wally West. So back when Wally really became the Flash, replaced Barry, the idea was to make him different. The idea of Wally is to say, okay, let's make him interesting and unique. And so Wally has powers and has abilities that are tied to him that no one else has. For example, Wally West cannot be cut off from the Speed Force. This is the reason why when DC Rebirth happened, Wally West was absorbed into the Speed Force as opposed to just kind of losing his powers and just sort of being a regular person out there somewhere. Wally mainlines it. And so because of that fact, like he's wildly powerful. Not only that, when it comes to like time travel, Barry Allen has to use a cosmic treadmill. He can bounce through dimensions. He can like, vibrate himself from one dimension to the next, but he can't run back and forward through time of his own volition. He has to use the cosmic treadmill to do it. Wally does not have that limitation. He can run back and forth through time. We'll see how that kind of plays out here. But one of the other big things that Wally has, and this is, I believe, a power that was actually given to people after Wally, is he has the ability to kind of transfer Speed Force powers to people that give them like healing factors, different things like that. But when he basically goes to attack Hunter Zolomon, because of this ability that he has, he picks up on the realization that Hunter doesn't have his powers anymore. And this is kind of the cool thing, is because the way Williamson writes this, it's a bit of a mystery here. We kind of know that Hunter Zolomon's working with Eobard Thawne, but we don't know how far this goes. And where Hunter Zolomon is talking to Wally, what he's doing is saying things like, my powers are gone. I don't have my abilities anymore. Because of the fact that my powers are gone, it's given me time to kind of reflect on my life, to reflect on the decisions decisions that I've made and the things that I've done. And ultimately, I've essentially seen the light. Hunter Zolomon was originally a good guy. He fell to becoming a villain because he was obsessed with the idea of fixing his own past. His desire to become a villain was rooted in his own struggles and strife, things that people go through. He just took a different road. But redemption was always right around the corner for Hunter. And Wally doesn't really know how to take that. But at the same time, Wally's also a good guy. And he's like, I mean, we kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But more so than any of that, Hunter Zolomon knows the location, or claims to know the location, of where Wally's kids are and how to get them. And so the overriding factor here for Wally is he wants his kids back. And so it's kind of a throwback for the old school Wally fans. All kinds of things go into this whole ideology. And so from here, you really kind of sidetrack for a second with Barry and with the Renegades. Now, of course, the Renegades are kind of like this temporal police force that had been created by Hunter Zolomon himself, but there was kind of a bigger ruse that was going on. We didn't really know what it was. All we knew was that the idea was Iris West was being taken for the quote-unquote murder of Eobard Thawne, and that was it. What you ended up picking up here with is this idea that Barry's kind of like, look, I need to find Wally West. Now, this is kind of one of those interesting situations where you kind of see like Barry and Wally juxtaposed next to each other, and then you kind of get, you really kind of, become to the, I guess, come to this understanding that the story is what makes the characters interesting, right? Like Barry Allen in and of himself is not really interesting to me. He's just a guy who runs really fast. Flash War to me is interesting because it's about Wally getting his kids back. That's it. It's Wally going to every length he needs to get his kids back, but it's Wally retreading the water of what Barry Allen did. Barry Allen's just kind of like running, trying to find Wally at the moment. Like, where in the world is Wally West? And you guys of the Renegades have been set up. This is all just one great big huge ruse. You guys have been tricked. You don't know it, but you guys have been tricked. Barry basically grabs Commander Cold. They whisk over to where Hunter Zolomon is, only for us to find out that what's actually going on is Hunter Zolomon was the one pulling the strings that basically sent the Renegades after Iris West, knowing Wally would follow, and with Wally would come Barry. Now, of course, with Hunter Zolomon kind of being incapacitated at the moment and more or less being defeated, the whole conflict switches to Barry versus Wally, and this is where it really picks up. And this is why I say like Joshua Williamson, I think, is one of the most prolific writers in recent years when it comes to the Flash, because it's a way to take these characters who otherwise may not necessarily have been interesting and turn them into like wildly interesting. As much as I love Francis Manipool's run, at the end of the day, it all just kind of came down to, well, we got to fight Gorilla Grodd and Gorilla City and Iris, and that kind of a thing. Like with this, it's Wally legitimately on the hunt for his kids, and it's kind of cool because you can look at this and you can say like, I understand exactly where Wally's coming from. If I had kids and then they vanished one day, I would go to the ends of the earth. I would set the world on fire if it meant that I would get my kids back. I would sacrifice everyone. I would eliminate everything in my path, do whatever I needed to do in order to get my kids back here. And that's the whole point, is that where Barry's kind of sent directly to Wally by virtue of Commander Cold using the using the Speed Force signature of Wally to kind of create like a pinpoint, more or less, where Barry can be sent to. When he finally catches up with him, this turns into like, one, somebody did something and screwed up the timeline, so everything starts going nuts. It looks like the actions of Dr. Manhattan, if I'm being honest with you guys. And two, once Barry catches up to Wally directly, the two of them kind of engage in this incredible conversation, because Barry's kind of trying to impart this little bit of wisdom, right? Saying, hey, look, take it from me, the guy who trained you, you can't do this kind of thing. You can't just like run around and do crazy situations and jump into these crazy events, because what you're gonna do if you run back in time, you don't know what you're gonna change. There's no such thing really as like alternate realities. Those don't really exist. I mean, the notion of DC sitting down and saying like, well, there's all these alternate realities that stem out of a single action, it doesn't really work that way anymore. Flashpoint kind of solidified that, and a few things in Rebirth solidified that. What this means is that if Wally goes back and let's say like he goes into the Speed Force, he breaks it, he goes in and like rescues his kids, no one knows what the consequence will be. That's the importance of all this, because that's what Wally's doing. Wally's idea is, I can run into the Speed Force, I'll crack it a little bit, but nothing really terrible is gonna happen. But it's like breaking glass. It's only a matter of time before the whole thing shatters. And that's the whole point, is because the idea seems to be no one knows exactly what will happen. If the Speed Force wall is what holds the multiverse together and all the universes just kind of free float into oblivion, if the destruction of the Speed Force means all the speedsters lose their power, no one knows what the consequences of this will be. But for Wally, it doesn't matter. He doesn't care what the aftermath of this will be. He's a dad who wants to find his kids. And it's kind of funny because when you have Barry sitting down, like Wally's idea is, look, like you were a mentor once upon a time, but I've been Flash, like I was Flash for a long time. I've carved my niche. I know what I'm about. But if you're getting in my way of finding my kids, you're no friend of mine. So I'm gonna give you a choice. You can move out of the way or I can run you over. And that's what's so cool. This is kind of like redemption time for Wally West fans, because there's like this amazing standoff. Barry's like, well, if you run, I'll catch you. And Wally's like, you can try. I can give you a head start and you still wouldn't catch me. And that's true. Wally is faster than Barry. And that's what's so awesome about this, is because like you can try your best. You can do anything you want to do. But at the end of the day, if I take off running in that direction, I'll have to stop in order for you to catch me. You're never going to catch up. And so because of that, like it's awesome here, because Wally just like takes off. And it's kind of interesting the way that it's drawn. You almost see it, right? You see like the look of Barry, like, please, Wally, don't do it. And Wally's like, this this is happening. And Wally just bolts. He's just like gone. And Barry tries to chase after him, and that's where this ends. But it's like, damn, man. Like, dude, it's so good. Like, it's so amazing. Dude, man, I love Flash Force so much. It's so badass. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.